fellow colleagues, Ravindran and Usharani, and many young delegates and senior academicians in the audience. When you offer your opening remarks, you have a sense of expectation, and also based on the preliminary reading of the conference papers, etc., you have an understanding of what is in store for the coming days. In the valedictory, when you close the remarks, we often look at the takeaways from this conference. Media and culture, no doubt, was an ambitious theme that the organizers had decided to plan. And as many speakers during the 3 days have explained, it is not a single one-size-fits-all perspective that can be offered on this contentious subject. Nevertheless, I would divide the takeaways into an institutional perspective takeaway that particularly came from the omnibus Department of Culture, Government of India, which offered us the many different dimensions of how the state looks at culture, how the state looks at the diversity and plurality. We also had another institutional perspective coming from the Council for Education Consortium, CEC, which highlighted the educational dimension, educational function. As all of you know, education is one of the 6 major functions of communication. Then we had very scholarly insights into not just the relationship between media and culture, but also a sense of interrogation of the realities of what our media is, and also the cultural manifestations in the media. Perspectives on philosophy, continuity of thinking in this field were offered. And also we had a very interesting dimension on the emerging notions of indigenous perceptions and perspectives of culture. There are several contestations when you look at indigenous perspectives, but nevertheless the plenary speakers and the participants were able to negotiate and understand what this means. The planners had also had intersecting themes. Intersecting themes is a very interesting concept by default they may have developed, wherein you are forced to think on the whole notion of, let us say, the relationship between economy and culture. For example, the sessions on Atmanirbhar was clearly indicated to look at self-reliance and the dynamics of the working culture, the industrial culture, the manufacturing culture. That was one view that was positive. We also had a very major intersecting theme on religion and humanism, the embedded nature of one in another, or the humanism in religion, or religion and humanism. And we had very interesting critique of media. Youngsters had a lot of questions on role, functions, etc., expectations, aspirations. But I think the panelists were successfully being able to tell them that one, of course, is the ascribed function that all of us know. One is the critical function. There was a lot of introspection about our media system as well. Is it promoting a particular kind of a culture? Is it exclusionary in nature? Is it inclusion? Some of those issues were not only presented by the panelists, but heavily interrogated by the audience. The hallmark of NMC 6 2023 was the nature of interesting insights that came from the floor. And of particular relevance is the interesting insights that the young students asked questions. They were brilliant and sometimes innocent, but innocence also has a lot of significance in our society. When they ask a question, it is exploratory, but in the exploratory nature of that is a deep insight. And I congratulate the nature and quality of questions that came from them. We also had an opportunity to participate in the parallel sessions. The quality and nature of presentations, as some of the observers have pointed out, was very insightful. But like all beginners, one cannot be too critical. These are young minds, 22, 24 years. They're exploring. We have to give them a certain sense of time for understanding the criticality. But the issues that they flag, uses, abuses, spread, access, equity, augmented reality, virtual reality, I think all display a sense of an active engagement with the media ecosystem. And I think the hallmark of NMC this time and all other times has been the unique opportunity that Padi and company gives to the 60 or 80, I call them as emerging scholars. They are the people. I always tell in my opening remarks to Padi, whenever he asks me for, what should I say, a decorative message to flag the NMC, I always say that this highlight, that the opportunity it gives. There is no other forum for emerging scholars in the country. All are heavy registration fees, heavy filtering systems. Not that he did not have peer review, he had peer review. And they, I think, are the hallmark. One other interesting thing that can happen is, apart from the parallel sessions, the next time NMC is organized, which I'm sure, there could be interactive workshop in the afternoon by the panelists to the young scholars. At least one day in 3 or 4 sessions, because the panelists perhaps come from different areas, they can do it. One other takeaway before I wind up is what I would call it as the furthering of the idea of the Indian Communication Congress. The idea has been floated. It requires an institutional build-up. And when you have people like Padi, institutional idea and idea push is guaranteed. There's no two opinion on that. He's a agenda pusher, not in a negative sense, but an agenda pusher in a very positive sense. And I'm sure that Padi or Biplab or even Ravi or some of my other colleagues will take it forward. I have formulated one short sentence of what the takeaway feeling can be. I'll read it out and close my comment. The NMC 6 2022, while focusing on a very broad theme of media and culture, offered institutional, civil society, scholarly, empirical, and intersectional perspectives on various sub-themes that included issues of social exclusion and inclusion. Emerging scholars offered their formative perspective on augmented and virtual reality. The idea of Indian Communication Congress was furthered at the conclave with the first meeting likely in Bangalore. I have other extensive notes which I will share it with Upendra Pali because the guest of honor has a very busy schedule. I'll stop and I've closed at 4.5 minutes or probably 5 minutes and 2 seconds. Thank you very much.